Welcome back to this 3.6 liter Chevy Traverse timing chain repair job. What a mess. Look how loose that is and stretched. Hopefully we will be able to find our time between this primary chain and these two secondary chains. We need to time these two cams before we remove this chain, and then we will need to time these two cams while we remove the rest of the chains and replace backwards. There are some idler pulley sprockets here that need to be replaced. We have 4 new VVT solenoids that go into these holes. We have new tensioners and slides and everything to retime this and keep it happy. We have these two cam timing tools, and supposedly if I do this job correctly, these are not necessarily required, but I like the idea of having them. It will keep the cams in place while I work. It will just reassure me that I put it all back together correctly, and then I'll be able to verify with the flat spots on the back side of these cams that everything is assembled correctly. I'm going to start by turning my crank bolt, and my crank timing mark here should line up about down here on the oil pump, and these cams flat spots will be in line and on top for me to be able to drop this plate on here, remove my tensioner and my guides and my chain. And my plate is in place. So now I can remove this whole side of the timing set. Now, I've mentioned before how I like to use hand tools. If I were to use an impact just now, my 12-point socket could have just rounded that bolt right off, and then I really would have been in trouble. That is why I like hand tools on engines. I am now to the point that I can rotate this set and get my flat spots up here in time. Now my timing mark will be actually down here this time instead of here, but before I move anything, I will verify that my crank is in time with the indent on the oil pump. Indeed it is. And right here is my next timing mark that I'll need to align with the cam's flat spots on top. I do believe that this cam here has jumped a tooth, or one of them has. I don't know for sure, but my cam alignment tool is just a little bit tweaked. It will not align. So I'm going to just trust where I'm at for now. I'm going to remove the primary chain. I'm going to remove the tensioner and the secondary chain. I'm going to remove that tensioner as well. And hopefully I'll be able to manipulate this cam here, the intake cam, to align with the exhaust cam. You know, it's funny, it could be actually this tool. I think that maybe they are too close together. The tolerances from this laser cut or water jet, whatever it was, it might have just been a little off. I've got some marks, and I'm just going to trust the fact that these cams are flat here, with or without the tool. Now, I do mention my lack of appreciation for power tools, but sometimes in the instance of this crank pulley bolt, I want to use my impact so I don't move where this crank is located. I do think this whole timing set is a tooth off. My timing marks here are definitely off, so I probably should have moved that back while I had that bolt tight. Luckily, I still have the pulley here. I should be able to get that on far enough that I can rotate it. There we go. I need to remove these idler pulleys next. Notice these are oriented differently. On this secondary timing set, my big gear is on the inside, my little gear is on the outside. Over here, my big gear is on the outside, my little gear is on the inside. That's because everything's offset here. They are actually a different part number, so I'm going to keep them separate right to left when I take this apart. Notice I said right to left. We're working on the front of this engine, but this is still the right side. I don't know if you remember how when I pulled the valve covers, I mentioned that the backside stunk. Look how much dirtier the oil is on this side than this side. And look how it blends. You can see a lot of the clean parts on this side and how it just turns to sludge in the back. That's pretty wild. I do believe that there's a design flaw in this system. I do believe that could have been improved based on the fact that this engine came out at the same time that LS engines all came out and hit the market. Those LS engines can run hundreds of thousands of miles. They can be boosted. They can be running up to 1,000 horsepower and not necessarily have these timing issues. So I do believe something different happened here with this new era of engines. I'm not so sure what, but it's just unfortunate that this has got to be this way. However, there are plenty of signs that tell me that maybe the oil wasn't changed quite as often as it should have been, whether it's the light on the dash that says it's time to change the oil, or maybe something different going on. But that definitely tells me that there's a lack of oil going on over here. It is funny, however, now I'm contradicting myself, that it seemed like this side was out of time and that side was not. Before I get into reassembly, I've got gaskets and junk and garbage all over the place that needs to be cleaned up, wiped down, degreased, and then we can proceed with reassembly. Also, I will note that I never did drain the oil. Before I fire up an engine, after any internal work has been done, I always change the oil. So anything that has fallen down in there has a better chance of being suspended in the old oil than if the pan was already dry. So I'm not too concerned with what might have come down there, with any coolant that might have leaked past the crank pulley hole and gotten into the oil. All of that will be drained out and replaced with fresh oil anyway. So here we are, cleaned up. All these surfaces, all I did was use a razor blade and a shop vac and just scrape. Get everything as clean as possible. And then I just used a degreaser rag and was able to polish it all up. That's going to be clean enough. Now it's time for some reassembly. This kit came with new cam phasers, and I mentioned that this is the right side of the engine, this is the left side of the engine. Remember, when you're looking at an engine and you need to know which side is right or left, it's from the flywheel forward. So if this were a rear-wheel drive vehicle and I'm here, this is my right side, this is my left side, my driver's side. Because this is a transverse mounted engine, this is still my right side. Even though this is the back, and looking at it from the front, it looks like it's left and right. Regardless, my left side intake phaser is here. My right side intake phaser is here, and it says L. My exhaust phasers are the same, so all I needed to worry about was which was left, which was right. These are going to be torqued to 43 foot-pounds, so I'm going to go ahead and finish zipping this off and get these in place, and then I'm going to make a couple clicks, make some noise, and get those all torqued down. All right, our phasers are torqued down. That's good. Now it's time to start timing stuff, putting it back together. Well, that looks pretty close. You can see the this one's a little bit longer than this one. It's definitely stretched. Also, I must note that these are built a little bit different. If you can see, this has link, 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 where this has link, 2 links, 2 links, 2 links, and a link. Now, we are going to be lining up our L's. There's a timing mark underneath the L's, and we will be using these dark links. So we'll go here, and we'll go here, and so far, that's looking good. And then this yellow link here will be in the timing mark for this idler gear. Our left side idler gear will have the big set of teeth on the outside. So that's that. And now we have a hole here, and that aligns with this tooth. So this tooth will go on the bottom for that yellow link. Just like so. And we will keep that loose. I'm also going to mark which ones I torque, so I can verify everything is torqued down as I assemble. We had 2 different tensioners, like that, like that. This was an internal bow, and this was an external bow, and then the tensioner will go up here pushing this out. So we're gonna find this in our kit, and then that in our kit, and assemble accordingly. I will just make sure as we go that my timing marks don't move. I don't want to jump a tooth right from the get-go, but before we put this together, we're going to rotate it a couple of times, hit our timing marks, and verify that nothing moved. It's funny that some stuff comes with new hardware. This one does not. But I kept all of the hardware together with everything, so there we are. Now, these tensioners are spring-loaded, plus there will be oil pressure coming into them from a galley behind. And the oil pressure will continue that. It's a ratchet. So as this wears, this will go a little farther. And because this is turning this way, it's actually pulling here, and pulling here. So everything stays in time, and this stretches. And eventually, it just gets to the point where this tensioner can't go any further, the chain stretches, and everything's out of time. All right, now we will torque this to 43 foot-pounds. And mark it. So I'm on my timing mark here on the intake, and here on the exhaust, and through here on that hole. So this side is in time. I'm going to wipe this area down one more time and put the tensioner on. So this was my tensioner, and you'll notice that this is much further out. The chain had stretched and stretched and stretched, and eventually this just quits ratcheting. It ratchets on oil pressure, and it pushes and pushes and pushes, but eventually it just reaches a limit. So the new ones are assembled with this pin in place. So that is for me to be able to assemble it here. And then, knowing that everything is still in time, I can pull this pin. And you can maybe see, maybe you heard, but it popped out. And now I am in tension, and that's good. We have a new crank gear here, and our timing mark is in the same spot down here. So I can just slide one off, slide one on. I'm going to use the old gear as a guide. Tap that on square. Just like that. And I'm going to put this idler gear on, and then I can set this timing chain up. Just needed a little bump there to get that bottom chain all set up in time. And now here, I'm on here, I'm on here, and I'm on here, which is perfect. And this tensioner is pretty cool because it's got the guide rail built in. Same idea though, it's spring loaded. We don't want to pull that pin until it's installed. All right, we're going to make sure that this is all free of any debris. And install that. Now we can pull that pin, listen for the pop, and watch this shoot up. Didn't move too far, but that chain's not stretched out, so that's good. Perfect. Now that we've got all this installed, we can go ahead and get our crank bolt back in place. Remember, we need to set up our chains here and time it to this tooth. We're going to need to rotate the engine to do that. We can pull that tab out. This was just used to hold the cams in place while I torque those phasers down. Now, when I rotated this, these cams had to rotate, I think, about 270 degrees to get there. So I should only have to rotate the engine about 90 degrees, I think, for these to line up. That's my recollection. So I'm going to turn this until my timing marks here are in line, and then just check everything here. And my teeth line up. Now this is loose because I still have my tensioner I have to get in place. So I'll do that next. Once again, it's kind of funny. Through this entire timing set, the only bolt that I had to reuse was this one, which it had this shoulder pivot. It's kind of funny that I have to reuse that one both times. Now, I'm a tooth off. Must have gone a little bit too far. Let's see here. How can we remedy this? Don't screw it up now. Marks here, marks there, marks there. Now I can get that tensioner in place. Pull the pin, verify, and do some rotating. Before I pull my pin, I'm going to just verify. I've got my timing mark here. It's kind of hard to see, but I see it. My timing mark here on the R for right side. Same thing here. I'm ready to pull my pin. That set my preload, my tension. And now I should be able to give this 2 complete revolutions, bring my timing marks back up on top like that, and check everything again. So when I rotated this over, I was concerned about this bouncing back and forth, and it seems like that just happens. I was also concerned that maybe it was jumping teeth. So I decided just to rotate it a handful of times, and now it's time to check. We talked about before these cam tools and how there's these flats on the top of the cams. So I brought this around to stage 1, so my timing set should be right here, okay? And if that's the case, then these should be flat. I'm going to rotate it just a little bit more and see if it comes in. There we go. All right, we're there. Now we should be able to rotate it about 90 degrees more, and we'll be in stage 2. There's that. Now my timing mark down here should be in alignment. And sure enough, it is. Cool. Now I can see I'm pumping oil here just by rotating it. I guess that's a pretty good sign. I'm going to just go ahead and rotate this engine 8 more times, and verify that everything's still in place. I also still have to torque all these. This will be 18 foot-pounds for all of the tensioner and guide plate torque specs. So I'm going to do that as well. Do my tensioner. I'll do my guides. Whoa. Good thing we check things. Now I've got to do those with the 13mm heads. Okay. Now it's time to rotate it a handful of times, check everything again. I'm going to do this 8 times. So I'm going to watch that keyway pass by. On the 8th time, about right here, then I'll actually check to see where I'm at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now I'll stop here and bring it to my timing mark. Oh, which I was in phase 2. So I might as well just check phase 2. About right there. And these are on the flats, I like that. Now I need to go 1.5-ish revolutions to get into phase 1. There's 1. And here comes my time mark. Oh, I passed by it, okay. Happens. That's 180 out. These should be coming in right there. This is good to see oil priming out of here. For whatever reason, this one doesn't have any oil pressure. That's kind of odd. Now I've got to figure out how to reset these, pull that apart, maybe see if any oil's cranking up that far. I'd really like to see this under pressure and stop bouncing around before I button it up. It's like a half a tooth. I wonder if I back this crank off a little bit, if it's still going to be there. Maybe I'm just being overreactive. So I was able to get that tensioner back out without taking too much apart. Now, down here on the ground, I am investigating and I'm going between what was there, what the other one looks like. This was the right side, these are the left side, and you can see that they've got different cavities. But this one here, you cannot compress unless you take it apart and it's like a step ratchet. This one here pushes back in, and this one here I believe is bad and pushes back in. But I'm not going to run this. I'm going to go get another one in the morning. It should be here 9:30 or so in the morning, and I'm going to just call this done for the day. So here we are with a concern, and I attempted to remove this guide and this guide here that the tensioner pushes on, and come to find out it just does not want to come out without removing this chain. I just can't finagle it. So I've decided that since this is in phase 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to count the links and then I'm going to reproduce them between the L and the L, and then this gold mark here that should be through here. So I'm basically going to count back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the 9th chain link. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th chain link. So if I can mark this one and count to here and find my 9, even though this was bouncing and jumping, maybe it didn't actually jump time. Maybe it's just the fact that there's enough slack and everything, since these tensioners aren't oil pressurized right now, that it was just giving me a funky reading. As long as all my marks are lining up the way they should, I know I'm fine. But this is the only one that was giving me troubles. Hopefully I'll be able to reach back in there and find the chain links I need, and I'm at 9. Otherwise, I could put this tensioner back on, mark this, managed to get a paint marker in there and mark that. I could just rotate it up and count that my red mark here is 9 away. That right there, that I don't get. You can see that it releases here. It's still grabbing, and somehow it manages to not skip. Jeez, I don't like that. But it is rolling. And I see my mark ever so slightly right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th one. It never moved. As much as I don't like what's going on, it still has not moved.